Okay, we're live.
There we are. Having a little bit of technical difficulties today.
Snafu.
You'd think after what? This is, I think, our 27th episode, we'd figure out how to make this just work. But
I just noticed my dad's online, so hi, Dad.
I know, Dad was first to join. Hey, Dad. I also want you to know that my mom left a very involved comment on our last YouTube. She would really love for you to read. So cheers to the moms and dads and a whole lot of l'chaim. Thanks to everybody who's here joining in for today's discussion. Welcome to the A Paratrooper and a Yogi Walk Into a Bar podcast. I just walked into this bar and there he is. The Mossad agent, so top secret, even they don't know he works for them. But every week, a brand new look. And if you never believed it before, here's your proof. It's Andrew Fox, the co-host of the Brink podcast, and Mr. Andrew Fox here on Substack.
Thank you very much. And I've got a good series going on at the moment, so please do check that out. It's about the Phase 2 ceasefire deal. I put hours into it, so I really want people to read it. Well, what can I say about my co-host, Shana Meyerson? If you couldn't work out which one was the Paratrooper and which one is the Yogi, all you do is look at the Yoga of War podcast that she presents on YouTube, and you'll see her bending herself into a pretzel over the issue of Israel, and it's both metaphorical and literal. She does, in fact, bend herself into a pretzel for a living. But please do give her a follow on YouTube at the Yoga of War, and also on here. Shana has a Substack where she takes her effervescent personality and puts it on the page. So I highly recommend you give Shana a follow. So Shana, tonight, what are we talking about?
So tonight we're going to talk about Qatar and Turkey, but we can't get into this conversation without first addressing last night's UN resolution. I have to say, Andrew, I wrote up something that literally, like, my thoughts rivaled the baby goats thing. And I'm like, Andrew is going to eat this up alive. And then as I'm writing my thoughts down, I see that the resolution passed unanimously, 13-0. So I had to get back and rethink my thoughts. I have to be honest, I was shocked to see it pass the way that it did. I thought for sure that Russia or China would veto. They would propose a much more pro-Hamas friendly resolution. America would veto, and we'd wind up with no resolution at all. But alas, the Ruskies and the Chinese abstained, and the resolution passed, as previously mentioned, 13-0. So since obviously there's a lot to this resolution, the thing that I think most people are concerned about is this statehood question, which is what I do want to focus on. And I do want to say one quick thing about the security forces before I even start my thoughts, which is everyone is afraid of putting their own troops in front of the vicious Hamas terrorists that are sure to snipe and terrorize them. And yet there's no irony lost on the fact that these are the same Hamas savages, and these are the same countries that would like to give them a state on Israel's border. Before I go on, anything you want to add to that thought?
Yeah, I mean, the state piece is really interesting because everyone is insisting that Hamas cannot have any role in this. They're like, it's fine, we're giving the Palestinians a state, but, Hamas is not going to have anything to do with it. And that is sophistry of the highest order, because nobody is proposing a way to get rid of Hamas or disarm Hamas. And, we can look at an international security force. Great. What are their rules of engagement? What's their mandate to open fire? Self-defense is a given. But beyond that, what are their rules of engagement? How can they prosecute terrorists they spot with weapons? Will they just have to let it happen? And then what happens if they start taking casualties? The first time a Turkish or an Indonesian or a Qatari or whoever it is, I don't think it'll be any of those three at this rate. But the as soon as one of those goes down to a sniper's bullet, what happens then? There's so many questions over this that nobody has answered, and everyone's just blithely saying, "Oh, don't worry, Hamas won't have anything to do with it," and nobody has articulated how that is going to happen.
Of course. And I mean, so as far as the pathway to statehood is concerned, I have to be honest, Andrew. Here's where I'm confused. And maybe you could clear it up because it just keeps happening. There are certain provisions in the 20-point peace plan that, as soon as they are actually said out loud with an intention of implementation, it's like they've never been said or agreed to in the first place. I just want to read point 19 straight out of the plan, which says explicitly, while Gaza redevelopment advances and when the PA reform program is faithfully carried out, ha ha ha, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which recognizes the aspiration of the Palestinian people. Now, from what I heard, that's essentially what they actually reiterated in the UN. This is not new information, but everyone's freaking out that Trump did have the option to leave it out, but having put it in, he got the backing of such wonderful friends such as Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. The list goes on. So this whole thing was really like a very non-committal way to say we are returning to the pre-October 7th aspiration of maybe two states, one day, if a whole hell of a lot changes within the PA, which we all know will never happen. This is more lip service to a very bad idea that everyone knows is a very bad idea, but must feign to support in order to prevent mass rebellions within their respective countries. Meanwhile, Andrew, I honestly have to say, a quick message to Mike Waltz and Ambassador Waltz, who I know must be listening, to our show today, that he needs to cut the crap on things like rockets give way to olive branches. Okay, this is total BS. We need to replace with something a lot more like we need to plug our noses, close our eyes, jump, and pray. Oh, sorry, one other teeny tiny detail. Hamas and Israel agree on something all of a sudden, and that's that they both reject the terms of this resolution. It's dead on arrival, but the PA is sure happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm going to take my victory lap at this point because I was saying from the start that Donald Trump is not your special friend. America first means what it says, and Trump will do the America first thing. Now, the America first suited striking Iran. It suited bringing an end to major conflict in Gaza and freeing the hostages. Now we're looking at a much wider regional picture from Washington's perspective. And all of a sudden, Turkey have F-35s, Saudi Arabia has F-35s, and Israel strategically is looking quite sidelined in the region right now.
Well, Turkey isn't a foregone conclusion, though Saudi
No,
does seem to be.
I think that was part of the pressure on Hamas deal to to get the ceasefire in the first place was that they would get F-35s. If they don't, I'll be astonished.
Okay.
And this is all bad juju because Donald Trump did what was best for A, Donald Trump, and B, America first. And now, unfortunately, Israel is discovering that America first, it very much enjoys business deals with Saudi Arabia, very much enjoys selling arms to Israel's enemies. And I've said it, I've told you all along. I've told you all along this is going to happen. You were telling me about Bibi and Trump's master plan. It was never a thing. And Israel's about to find out the hard way what happens when Donald Trump goes transactional. Because what Donald Trump isn't thinking, when everything is a deal, what you lose sight of, unfortunately, is the second and third order effects.
Yes.
And by giving Qatar, huge regional status, by giving Turkey weapons, by giving the Saudis the F-35, you are creating a whole basket full of problems for further down the line once Mr. Trump is out of office. And especially if you don't get Mr. Vance in office. And he is very much not a friend of Israel from the noises I've seen,
Agreed.
And this is a real problem. And I've said it all along, and I was right, as always.
No, wait, hold on. Sometimes I'm right. I don't get me started. But I'm going to chase you on this victory lap. On one thing, which is to say that I am nonpartisan. I am independent, and I will give credit wherever credit is due. Trump has unequivocally done more for Israel than any president in the history of the United States. Hands down, that's unequivocal. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he does. And like you, I am definitely in this like eternal eyebrow raising mode these days. But I have to be honest, as an American, um, usually I'm so like just concerned with Israel first. I have to be honest, not because of dual loyalties, but because Israel is facing existential crisis and America isn't. And so I have to pay attention where attention is due. But I am still an American. And what's really bothering me about Trump right now and his giddiness over like cozying up to any terrorist who's willing to don a business suit, it does seem that at the heart of all of this, the West's war on terror, which is a nice way of saying Islamic terror, is officially over. And now it's just about choosing which jihadis we want on our team. That is very disturbing. In America, we talk a lot about how Europe is fallen. I think these are maybe not our first signs, but our strongest signs that America has and is falling as well. I think there's a dark future. This has been the Muslim Brotherhood's stated goal all along, which is world domination through politics, demographics, and force when necessary. This is all a lot easier when world leaders such as Donald J. Trump just slip the keys over in a handshake. And given today's geopolitical climate, the Brotherhood knows that they only have to play nice for 3 more years. Well, 3 years and a couple months. And the gloves will come off. We could put as much lipstick as we want on this pig or spray as much cologne. A pig is still a pig, and a Dougie is still a Dougie. Hello, Dougie. But before anyone gets upset about this haram terminology, a pig is just an analogy. It's not a slur. And one more thing, as the world's superpower, I want to talk about what you say about making America great again or America first. We should, being as great as we are, be dictating the terms to all of these essentially powerless actors, but instead we're making concessions without conditions. I don't think that by subverting the security of our allies, such as Israel, in deference to the desire of our enemies and frenemies, is a good long-term strategy. It may cost us less in the short run, at least financially when it comes to America first, but eventually it's going to cost us our entire democracy in the long run.
Yeah, hard to argue. And look, people are getting very rich off this. Very rich. Qatari money talks, Saudi money talks, Emirati
$1 trillion.
Talks. Yeah, $1 trillion. It's very, for those of you who were born before the year 2000, you'll get that right. We should do more. We should do more.
You got the hair and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have the hair.
No, my dog's got the hair for me. That was a different dog to last week. That was the other Malinois.
Okay.
Other Belgian Shepherd. But yeah, they all want. I think she heard about the other one's appearance last week and wanted to, get on there as well. But yeah, look, Donald Trump sees everything as a transaction. If someone offers him a lot of money, he'll go for it, and he doesn't care what that person's morality, background, aims, goals, long-term ambitions are. He's just seeing dollar signs because he's the art of the deal guy. And it's I told you so is not particularly pleasant in this case because it's really bad. It's really bad. And going back to the UN Security Council resolution, that's really interesting as well because in some ways, it shows just again how weak and pointless the UN is. Like, who's going to implement it? Like, great, you've got your Security Council resolution. Well done. Now, where do we go with it? And look, you've got 200 American staff officers frantically thrashing away at PowerPoint slides in Kiryat Gat in southern Israel, trying to plan this stuff. And, they're talking about building a police force to work with the security force of vetted Gazans. Great. How long does a police officer take to train? What's the length of police academy in the US to get a good, capable police officer who understands the law and who can, and don't get me wrong, they don't want SWAT teams, they don't want, CSI Gaza. They're not looking at that sort of high end level of policing. They basically just want glorified security guards. But even then, that takes time. And the idea, and they're trying to deliver this at pace, at a rush, and it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess.
It takes more than time, Andrew. It actually takes people. Trump keeps talking about how everyone is lining up to be a part of the security force. But I have yet to see the line forming. Nobody seems to actually want to put anybody into Gaza.
No. And then, I think this is really, as far as Donald Trump goes, about keeping a relative calm for 3 years, and then he can leave office. And once it erupts again, he can then say, "Oh, that would never have happened if I'd been president."
He will.
That's really all he's positioning himself for, is for 3 years. 3 years of relative quiet, with Al Sharaa, with the Qataris, with the Turkish, and he completely fails to understand the region. He doesn't understand the psychology. He doesn't understand the context or historical background to any of this. It really is just about Donald Trump being able to say that he kept the peace for 3 years. And it's no more than that. And, if Israel gets smashed after 3 years are up, well, wouldn't have happened when I was president.
Do you think it's that he doesn't understand, or does it go back to what you're saying about just everything's a transition? And if you give me $1 trillion, which, by the way, is never going to happen, I can look away and say, oh, never mind. The things I understand, I'm going to pretend I don't understand. We're going to turn whatever rockets into olive branches and everything will be good in the world. I mean, come on, we're not supposed to be negotiating with terrorists. And yet Steve Witkoff, yet again, is meeting directly with Hamas leaders. I mean, so how many times are we going to go through this song and dance? It seems like another thing that's unclear to me is, now that we have the resolution passed at the United Nations, we're still hearing more than anything rumblings about softening demands or even dropping them, of demilitarization, and even allowing them to stay in power in the 47% in the middle of the Strip, where, by the way, as you mentioned in your article, almost every single Gazan lived. So they're still under complete Hamas control. This goes 100% against Israel's war aims. And by the way, I don't think that Israel's going to sit by and let this happen. I mean, last night, I think it was Israel Katz who said, we're ready. We're ready to go back in and recapture if we need to. They cannot just give Hamas a smaller, denser Gaza. It's going to become a cesspool, a rat's nest.
Yeah, but look, here's the issue. Okay, so I was speaking to somebody today. I can't go into huge details, but let's just say they know things. Let's just say they're quite senior in the IDF and leave it there. And they were saying the same, that if Hamas doesn't disarm, then Israel's going to go back in. And I've got two questions that couldn't really be answered. It's one, what if Donald Trump says no? Because if, think about the end of the Iran war.
Yeah.
When Israel had planes in the air. And Donald Trump said they don't know what the fuck they're doing. If you remember that moment, he will launch at Jerusalem, if not launch missiles, but have a real go at Bibi if Bibi allows that war to restart. And then let's just say they're allowed to restart the war and it all goes really well, and they occupy the whole of Gaza. Then what? Are you going to do a 20-year Basra, Afghanistan, Baghdad-style insurgency campaign? Are you gonna hold the whole of Gaza? Who's going to run it? Who's going to govern it? Who's going to police it? Who's going to take the trash to the dump? Who's going to provide the water? Who's going to control the basic utilities? I mean, and even then, you can't guarantee that Hamas will disarm, because they're just going to go to complete underground landmines everywhere. It'd be a disaster.
But won't
Um,
that lay the groundwork for phase 2, Andrew? If we had control, then we can put in the security forces, etc.
what you mean? You mean international forces?
Yeah, yeah. I'm talking about
Yeah,
for the Trump plan phase 2 to happen. If Israel had complete control, wouldn't it be easier to execute?
but Hamas is still there.
They are, but if Israel takes full control, then keep in mind there's no more hostages. So Israel can actually complete the job they were unable to complete before, what was it, October 13th?
Yeah, but then you've got upwards of 100,000 IDF soldiers permanently deployed in Gaza. You've still got all the reserves still deployed. You've got a country that's drained from 2 years of very kinetic war. You've got the economy suffering damages because people can't hold down jobs because they keep getting pulled away for reserve service. You've still got body bags coming home. Um, and the IDF just isn't designed for that. It's, the US Army couldn't pull it off
No.
in Iraq or Afghanistan. Like, what can the
Yeah.
IDF, who are a less capable army than the US Army, no matter what the Israelis tell you?
Yeah. No, I didn't
You
make
know,
myself clear. My question is, assuming this deal, which is now codified in the United Nations, won't phase 2, which includes Israeli withdrawal, be easier to execute if Israel gets control of the whole Gaza Strip and then phase 2 unrolls, including the demilitarization, including the pulling back of Israeli forces, including with Trump's what's it called? His something of peace, which by the way is the head of that. What happens after 3 years? Is that going to be like his full-time job? But do you see what I'm saying? Like it might just lay the
yeah,
groundwork for the
just
rest of the plan.
I mean, maybe, but the second the IDF pull back, Hamas come out again. You
Unless the
know,
international forces are put in to maintain the
yeah,
independent.
but then we run into the same problems as before. What rules of engagement are they under? Are these countries who go in there willing to fully prosecute Hamas? Are they willing to take casualties? Are that what happens if they do?
Hmm.
We then hit all of these same problems again. Except you've then, of course, got Israel getting utterly destroyed on the world stage. And I still maintain that international isolation is currently a bigger strategic threat to Israel than Hamas is. 'Cause Hamas can't do anything to Israel now. They can't. They can't go back to the old rocketing ways. They're not going to do another 7th of October. Hamas is able, with goons with guns, to control Gaza's population because they've just got pure numbers. They've got 20,000,
Yeah.
20,000 little jihadis with AKs. That is more than enough to take care of those clans and that sort of thing. But they can't do anything else. And I'm not,
So,
I don't want Hamas to stay there, but I
yeah.
just don't see a military option to get rid of them because, we go back to the surge. Everyone always talks about that stupid surge in Iraq. They're like, yeah, it really works. It's like, no, it didn't. Because within half a decade, you had ISIS. And it was a direct line from one to the other. It's like saying you were winning in the halftime in the Super Bowl. Even if you then go on to lose, you're like, oh yeah, but we still won because we were leading at halftime. It's just bollocks. Like the surge was
So
a failure.
it
Um,
almost sounds, Andrew, like you don't think the 3,000-year-old conflict has been resolved.
I am skeptical that the 3,000-year-old conflict is still resolved. That letter was just amazing. I laughed out loud when I read the opening lines of that. I was like, dear God, the self-delusion of this man, it has no limits. Um, So yeah, I mean, basically, what we got is we've got a military problem that is incredibly tricky
Hmm.
with no obvious solution, and it comes down to psychology. Look, we had the incredible Dr. Rolly Petter on last week, who is a proper psychologist. I am an average psychologist who is not professionally qualified. I merely have a master's degree in the topic. But the reason I studied that degree is because wars are fought by people, and if you can understand the people better, then you'll understand the war better. And in this case, we have to look at the psychology of Hamas. Like, where is there any other group? Say they're non-jihadi. Say this was a European group who'd done terrorism and launched an attack on their neighbours. A European group would absolutely surrender in the situation that Hamas is in. They've been battered. All their leaders are dead.
Hmm.
Their logistic stockpiles are destroyed. Their strategic ability is done. They are beaten in every conceivable military way. Hamas are already beaten, and yet they won't surrender. And the reason they won't surrender is because they want to die. They want to be martyrs. They want to be shahid. They take pride in their status as mujahideen. They think that if the Israelis kill them, they go to Jannah and everything is golden. They get their virgins, hooray. And they've died for the cause of Palestine. Like, you can't bomb your way into defeating an enemy that wants to die. And if the steps Israel would have to take to kill all 20,000 of Hamas's members, first of all, they'd probably recruit more anyway. But secondly, the damage in civilian collateral would be off the charts because of Hamas's tactic of sacrificing their own people alongside them, like some sort of medieval death cult where they want to take as many people with them when they die as they can. This is an incredibly complex problem because of psychology of Hamas. And there's no real way around that. And look, they very cleverly embedded themselves in the civilian population. They very cleverly owned the Gaza Strip for a significant period of time where they got to control the education and indoctrinate the next generation. There is nobody in Gaza Strip that loves Israel. There is nobody in the Gaza Strip that thinks that Israel is a good thing and they will be happily to live in peace alongside them for the rest of eternity. There's nobody there. So even if you remove Hamas, you've still got 2 million people that hate you, especially after you've just bombed them for 2 years, and who will take every opportunity they can to attack you in future because they believe in fundamental things like waqf, where if land has once been Islamic, then it must be Islamic for all eternity, and therefore it is haram that Israel even exists. Like, you still haven't solved this problem. People get very reductive on this one. They say that Hamas is the problem. It's not. The lack of willingness on the part of the Palestinian Arabs to coexist alongside Israel is the problem. Hamas is almost a red herring at this point.
Sure. And one of the things that was notably missing from the UN resolution was the part of the plan that involved re-education and de-radicalization. Because, Andrew, as you said, any normal European force would have just not only would they have surrendered. What cracks me up is not, me, funny, not funny, but even these 200 people would rather die in a tunnel and suffocate or starve or whatever than surrender. They want to make sure they could come out with honor. It's like, okay, get rid of the honor, just get out and save your lives. But you're right. I mean, it's a death cult. I mean, that goes without saying. But I forgot what my real point was going to be because I just went off on a random tangent.
That's all right. It's all good going on a rant. But yes, Sandra's saying Hamas is not the problem. It's like, no, they're only part of the problem.
Yes,
they're only a small part. At this point, they're only a small part of it. And Moshe has just jumped in and said all 2 million of the problem. And that's true. And if we're going to be more generous than that, because I'm not saying that you need to kill all 2 million Gazans,
right.
That is clearly monstrous. But the point is the idea of Palestinianism, and go read Einat Wolf. She's brilliant on this. She coined the term as far as I know. And she expresses it so clearly and so beautifully. She's a very clever lady. But it's the idea of the river to the sea. It's the idea that the land on which Israel sits is Islamic land, and it is unacceptable to the Palestinians that it should exist, and they don't get to go back to their grandparents' houses in whatever town.
I know the point I was going to make, though.
So I just want to be really clear there that I'm not saying that Hamas isn't a problem. I'm saying it's only a tiny part of the problem. If you remove them, the bigger problem still remains.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Einat Wolf was on the Yoga of War, and she did go over the concept of Palestinianism. It's a great episode. But what I was going to say was actually going back to the European thing is that when we go back to the concept of there is no moral equivalency, and I mean literally zero moral equivalency between not just IDF and Hamas, but Israel and the people of Gaza. Keep in mind, there's not a single person who has said, oh, due to 10/7, it's going to radicalize the Israeli population and they're all going to even become, terrorists are going to become, because the general public is never going to be able to deal with these massacres without getting more and more vicious. And you just don't see that. You go to Israeli society and you see people who, honestly, they want peace. They understand that war is sometimes the inevitable pathway to peace, but Israel wants peace. And even in the face of what happened on 10/7, we still have a lot of Israelis on the left who are now like, let's go back to this concept of peace. Gazans are people. Let's make peace with people, blah, 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 blah. So it's just such a different dynamic. But
I really recommend people spend time on Gaza and Telegram. You can find the groups pretty easily. Go see what they're actually saying. And it's certainly not, we've had 2 years of war, let's make peace with Israel. I've not heard anyone say that.
Right.
You know, they're all very cynical about the peace deal. They're very cynical about being occupied by any international force, which is actually really interesting. They're really they're complaining about the tents a lot. You know, it's pretty miserable for them, and it must be, you know, for those who aren't combatants, it
Sure.
must be truly, truly unpleasant. You know, to be in a leaky tent when your house has been destroyed. You know that's a really sad thing for them. But the one thing they're absolutely not saying is let's make peace with the Israelis. I've not
Exactly.
seen one person say that.
Not one. Meanwhile, Andrew, I
Or
know
so,
you've
not the
been.
Israelis. Sorry, the Jews. They don't say the Israelis. They say
No, they
Yogi.
don't. It's this Zionist entity. The pigs and the pigs and dogs. What are we? I don't know. Whatever. Frogs,
I thought you were
dogs.
hiding behind rocks.
Yes. Pigs and dogs hiding behind rocks. But Andrew, because I know you have to go soon, we haven't gotten into Qatar and Turkey, which is technically, I guess, supposed to be the topic of the conversation today. So go for it. You start. I've got so much to say. I might have to put it in writing.
Yeah, there's your next Substack article. Sorted. I did. My one today was dealing with Qatar and Turkey quite substantively. But look, they are Muslim Brotherhood countries. Their involvement in Gaza is deeply problematic because they will see Hamas as in their interest to keep them in the game in some capacity or other. The Israelis are absolutely vetoing Turkish involvement right now, but Donald Trump is super keen on it. So Trump is pushing Turkey, Bibi's saying no. And if they do go in there, it'll be a disaster because you'll have some very hostile troops effectively within Israel's borders. You know, or if not in them, sort of right up to them. And Moshe, we did answer that earlier, I'm afraid, my friend. So all I'm saying is, you might want to rewatch.
Many times and share and comment and do all the things. Yeah. So one thing, like even beyond the Muslim Brotherhood, Andrew, I see Erdogan as like mini Putin, that both of them are trying to sort of bring back the glory of a previous empire. Putin trying to reunite the USSR, and Erdogan wants to be the Sultan of the new Ottoman Empire. I see this bigger than just he's a threat to Israel, though obviously Iran has left a vacuum of this ring of fire that is now just embers. And I could tell you from Los Angeles, from personal experience this year, embers can turn into wildfires in a flash. And they see the opening, all the pieces are in place, even if they've been knocked over. And if they take over the Iranian ring of fire in start moving outward as you know, fire will do, besides being right there on Israel's border, and besides being a NATO ally, um, this is so complicated because not only are they a NATO ally, but Israel is a major non-NATO ally. So there would be issues on both sides. Everybody's saying, oh, well, Israel wouldn't be able to attack Turkey because they're a NATO ally. Well, Turkey is going to have some real problems if they get aggressive with Israel because of their major non-NATO ally status. And so I just see this as just such a quagmire. If they continue to encroach on, if Turkey continues to encroach on Syria, we're going to wind up with Turkey right on Israel's border, possibly maritime. And I see this, especially if they get the F-35s. I know you seem to think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think it's as foregone. Did you see the photo of Trump and MBS with the planes flying overhead?
Oh no, I didn't see that. No.
I'll have to send it to you. It's actually an amazing photo of a very, very dark moment. The world is coming to an end. Let's just be clear about that. I wake up every morning like humming the tune. It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine, except for I don't really feel fine anymore. I really don't.
I mean, that's peak period REM. You know, I'm down for it.
Lots of pop culture references from the 80s and 90s today.
Just showing our age. Showing our age. Well, our
Yeah.
slightly different ages, but yeah.
Slightly, very slightly. I know that I was, apparently around in what was it that you called it? I don't know, Roosevelt or whatever, but I really don't go quite that far back. Okay, I do. Can I say one more thing about MBS?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Do
know
it.
I know you have to go. Um, I just today's conference, this like ass licking conference was deeply disturbing on a lot of levels. But one thing I want to comment on that actually haven't heard any commentators commentating on for some reason is that when did you see how Trump kept like playing distraction for MBS if an uncomfortable question came up?
Yeah.
And when he, like, told off that reporter, like, "You're a really bad reporter," like, you I'm like, "Can you pretend to be, like, presidential? Can you just, like, deal with a tough question and without being so petty?" Um, Regardless, when he was, asked or confronted about Saudi role in the 9/11 attacks, MBS made this claim that, bin Laden, like, cynically just used Saudi operatives in a deliberate attempt to torpedo US-Saudi relations, and I know you know the parallel where I'm going with this. I'm not sure why other people didn't make this connection, but as such, MBS's like response was to make a special effort to ensure that the US Saudi relationship got even stronger and continued to thrive. So the irony, for anybody who hasn't caught it, is that one of the primary motivations of the 10/7 attacks in Israel was to, you got it, torpedo the imminent Israel Saudi Abraham Accord. But instead of recommitting to the alliance, MBS took the bait and he backed down. I'll even say he took on like an aggressive and antagonistic stance against the Jewish state instead of saying, regardless of the fact that you're trying this on us for the second time, we're not going to fall for it.
Like, bottom line is that the Arab street, is so anti-Israel now that these Middle Eastern dictatorships really aren't that stable. They're stable while the going's good, but when things go bad, they go south real fast. And MBS can read the streets in Saudi, and he knows how affected by Hamas propaganda in Gaza they've been. And there is the aspect that it's Jews bombing Muslims, and that's problematic for a lot of Arabs. So MBS knows that he can't go anywhere near normalizing with Israel now, unless there's a Palestinian state at the end of it. It ain't going to happen. And I think Trump knows that as well, which is why he's kind of backed away from pushing Saudi on the Abraham Accords, why he's happy to give them F-35s, even though they haven't normalized with Israel. That carrot is now gone. And in many ways, you can make the case, I think, that Hamas achieved their war aims in that respect.
Well, the war's not over, as we discussed this morning before the show, Andrew, and as evidenced by the fact that interest in the war seems to be waning. I think it's going to flare back up, whether it's sooner or whether it's later. And I think that accepting any of this as a foregone conclusion is premature.
Victor brought me an offering.
Ah, nice. So,
Good stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, I do want to say there's no love lost between the Saudis and the Palestinians. All of this stuff about wanting a Palestinian state is merely performative, as you said, for the street. But the fact is that they're not actually talking about a state. They're talking about a pathway to statehood. And another one of the shocking things, honestly, which he said in words twice today, at least that I counted, because I wasn't really paying too much attention, but I was just sort of listening. Twice MBS said in words, yes, we want to join the Abraham Accords, which I found very, very interesting. So I think the street probably heard it because he said it twice, and it's going to be all over the social media street.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. And anyway, I'm a complete skeptic on the Abraham Accords anyway. I think they're a red herring. I don't think they achieved a great deal, but they look good on paper.
There's been a lot of Israeli-Saudi security cooperation for decades now that, with a wink and a nod, everybody knows that they're already in accord. So it's not going to be a huge leap to take the next step, but it is a huge diplomatic leap, of course.
Presentationally, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Anyway,
Cool.
I always
Well,
leave it up to
thank
you
for
to end
joining
this.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to do it anyway without you inviting me to. I'm just like that. I'm just going rogue.
Yeah,
I like my
go
dog.
rogue.
Like my dog. I'm just doing whatever I want.
Hi, oh, hello. He's
So
not
yeah,
letting go.
thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to chat to you guys weekly. Please do leave a comment or like and subscribe. If you're listening on audio, you can give us 5 stars. And we're incredibly grateful that you give us your time on a weekday or evening in the UK or morning over in the States.
Yeah. And we're also on YouTube for anyone who has friends who aren't on Substack. I know YouTube is a slightly larger platform. We could always use your love over there as well. Any likes, comments, shares, deeply appreciated. And we do love hearing your input. So on that note, Andrew, until next week, l'chaim.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you.
I'll see you next week. Bye.